All right, so we finally have an idea of what Destiny 2's future looks like. We do have this map here, this content map that shows us the next two expansions, as well as some seasonal updates that will be available to all players. I'll leave the image up now so you can go ahead and pause and take a look at that. Essentially, the expansions give us most of the same stuff we're used to getting. Seasons look the same, which it seems we're just calling those seasons again, but what's the difference anyways between that and an episode? Yeah, so we know it has a future. That's great. I mean, we knew something was eventually going to get put out there as far as what Destiny 2 holds in the future, because Bungie needs something to fuel Marathon, and they have to pay the bills, right? And as you can tell in the roadmap, there are two expansions being dropped in 2025, and it seems as though they're going to be like a medium-sized expansion as opposed to the larger ones we're used to getting. So, take that as you will. And as stated in this text here, we are excited to try new things that challenge your idea of what a Destiny experience can be. We are actively prototyping non-linear campaigns, exploration experiences similar to the Dreaming City or Metroidvanias, and even more unusual formats like roguelikes or survival shooters. Each expansion will present a new opportunity to try something different. The game needs innovation, and anyone who watched my previous video on exotic missions, hopefully you at least know where I'm coming from. Exotic missions are just one example. The expansions are very similar in format, but as long as the content itself, I think, is different enough. As long as the story's good, most people don't care what the structure is. They just care whether or not it's worth their time. And recently that's been the case. So, trying something different to shake it up is an important thing, especially when the game has been around for 10 years at this point, 7 years for Destiny 2. So you have to try and switch things up. Seasons look similar, getting strikes, exotic missions, combat meta, and balance updates. Really, there doesn't seem to be too much of a difference there. And the core game stuff, I'll leave an image here. There's a new UI thing that they're going to try out to kind of streamline everything for newer players, because it is super confusing for some people to get into this game and figure out what you need to do, like to get raid ready or to just get your character up to a decent level. And that's been an issue for a very long time. So hopefully that happens. And there's this little tidbit here about gear and challenge should matter. And I will say gear does feel less and less important. Challenge really depends on the skill level of the player. And, I don't want to say that, not everyone in this game is of the same skill level, plays the game as much, and so on. Like a day one raid team is simply not going to find a Grandmaster as challenging as, say, someone who maybe plays the raid day 3, right? I mean, it's just how it is. So you have to find a way to appease everyone, and they are kind of doing this like selector thing where there's going to be like different subtypes of expert and master. So you can like expert 1, expert 2, and the rewards will change based on those levels. The higher you go, obviously, the more rewards you get. Most of this stuff, again, is in development. Sorry, I didn't mention that earlier. So any images I'm showing you of stuff is, of course, subject to change. So don't, take it with a grain of salt. Don't take it too seriously. And last and certainly not least, there is no more linear storytelling in this next expansion. Instead of a smooth, straight line from beginning to end, it's going to be more like beginning, end, middle, I guess? More so like you can go and explore what you want and do what you want instead of being forced down the one narrow quest line that you have to do no matter what. Which is an interesting concept. And again, it's just another way to try and shake up the game that again has consistently just been the same for 7 years with some innovation here and there. I will give Bungie some credit. Oh my goodness, credit. What are we giving Bungie some credit? That was so cringe. Anyways, they deserve some credit with shaking up things here and there, but for sure this is another way to do that. There's hope for the future, no pun intended, and I'm excited to see what these expansions are like. I think the overwhelming opinion of this, though, is we've kind of heard a majority of these things before, and, you know, hearing a plan and seeing it put into action are two very different things. I think there is a certain lack of trust that most of the community holds over Bungie, not the devs necessarily, but the, you know, the execs. Names don't have to be named, but we all know who. And, you know, it's not to say that Bungie can't pull this off, they can. It's just whether or not it's going to work out in the end in terms of revenue. Are we going to see more layoffs? Are we going to see maybe Destiny pivot if this stuff doesn't work out? It's definitely, at this point, it's either you do or you don't if you're Bungie, because the final shape wasn't a flop. It was good from, you know, it was critically acclaimed. The community loved it, and it still wasn't enough to bring those numbers back up. And that's concerning if you're if you're anybody, if you're a fan, you're a dev, you're an exec. That's super concerning. So trying something different is you know, adapt or die is in a sense what they need to do, and I hope it works out. I think Destiny 3 eventually has to happen. Maybe this multi-year journey is what bridges the gap between now and Destiny 3. I think it has to happen at some point because our characters are too strong. And, you know, they talk about the game, you know, challenge and gear mattering. Well, it's tough for it to matter when, for a lot of people, the game just isn't challenging anymore. And, you know, introducing different ways to select difficulty, it's good for people who maybe find the game a little bit more challenging and they want to inch their way up and kind of, you know, work their way up the ladder. But for people who do GMs and, you know, master raids, the game is simply not challenging anymore. And there needs to be something to increase that challenge to make the game rewarding in a sense, outside of, you know, just getting loot. There has to be more of a challenge involved, and it doesn't seem like that's gonna happen. And, you know, working your way back up in a new game, it isn't a challenge per se, but at least in that sense it'd be a fresh start, and you'd have to work your way up the ladder again. And I think it just needs to happen at some point, not necessarily right now. You know, I'm here to see what these expansions have to hold, and if they work out, then, you know, maybe I'm wrong. Maybe Destiny 3 isn't what this game needs, what Bungie needs rather. So, you know, I hope I'm wrong for Bungie's sake, because I love this game. You know, as long as it's good content and it's worth playing and making content on this channel for, then I'll do, you know, I'm for that. But if it's just nothing burger, it's a very mediocre expansion, then, you know, the question becomes not like, will Destiny 3 happen? When? Because that's really all they would have left in the chamber, outside of like shaking up the campaign and, you know, going to a smaller sized expansions and dropping 2 as opposed to 1 to try and, you know, get the hype built up around these release dates. So at the end of the day, we have to wait and see. Summer 2025 is quite a ways away. A lot can happen in between now and then, and hopefully these next 2 episodes are a little bit better than the first one. I mean, we call them episodes, but, or rather Bungie does, but they're seasons. Let's be honest, they're seasons, and there's nothing really different about them. So hopefully the content in the next 2 seasons are just better, because Usually, as we all know, or most people know, maybe you don't, seasons that release alongside expansions are usually not so great because the team was just working on an expansion and the episode didn't get so much activity or attention. So the next 2 episodes might be a little bit better because that's, all the team has been working on for the past few months, with I'm sure some of them working on the concept and the roadmap for these next couple of expansions. So at least we know what's going on. That's all I can really be happy about right now. For the rest of this stuff, it's just them telling us things that they want to do, and I'm happy for the communication. But until this stuff is put into action, it's not going to change much. And what did we get today for the anniversary? Quite possibly the worst little anniversary pack update I've ever seen. It's horrible. I might do a video on that, but I don't want to complain too much about it because I get it. It's rough right now. You got to drive player engagement up. But the way they went about it was just so horrible. It was not. I'm not even bothering with it right now. So, but I mean, free armor, I guess. Like, that's the only good thing. Anyways, thanks for listening to my thoughts. Let me know what yours are below, as long as you are respectful. And I'll see you in the next one.